Welcome to another episode of Healing Money Talks. My name is Emma Lucy Wall, and as always, I invite you to turn your phone onto airplane mode, put the kettle on, make yourself a nice warm drink, sit down somewhere comfortable and relax, and listen deeply to the conversation that's about to unfold. You never know what you might hear. So my very special guest today is Daven Lee. Daven is the creator of a unique body of work called The Power of the Yin. She leads programs, one-on-one intensives and classes to help brilliant women embody the creativity, potency and unique expression of their native energy, the yin. Daven offers her work where she lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and online to clients worldwide. You can find out more about her work at her website, davenlee.com. Welcome, Daven. Thank you so much for joining me.
You, Emma.
Just before we pressed record, Daven was telling me that she's feeling super inspired about money today. So the floor is yours. Tell me.
Well, yeah, I'm just feeling how we're in this transition in the world around money and how there is this creative rebirthing that's happening. So my particular excitement today is about cryptocurrency, actually. I've been asking to learn more about it. And I have a beautiful friend who is very excited about it and who is kind of filtering the research for me. And what I'm getting, and I think about my son a lot, who's 19, and he's the next generation. He understands this stuff much more quickly than I do. So there's something about his generation, what's coming up, this crux that we're on that feels like, oh my gosh, the world is about to fall apart. And yet what I think is actually happening is there's this beautiful transition that's going on that we are crossing over to. And with the money, what I'm getting about the money system with this new currency, it's decentralized. It is global. It understands that we are all connected and that these boundaries and borders of nations and identities and politics and nefarious political activity, that we can bypass this actually and create connections directly with each other and with money. And people are, and I want to say that this is like hot off the presses of my feeling understanding. So who knows? I'm not sure if it's right to say we're moving into the second generation of cryptocurrency because I don't know enough about it, but this is not about Bitcoin, which is like the first generation. This is the next iteration that has to do with placing value on caring for things and on generative things, as opposed to the old money system, which is based on exploitation.
Yeah.
So I'm just like getting that this is the next. We've had this idea that money is this one thing, and some of us feel that it's evil, and some of us feel, that it's causes all kinds of problems. But it's now evolving into something else. It's like we have figured out, actually, we can literally change this into something else, where instead of making money off using resources, we're actually making money off of caring for them and growing them. So I'm excited about that.
That really ties into so much of the work that some of my other speakers, Louis Burtlink with his Care First economy, and Barbara Wilder with Money as Love, and Sarah McCrum's work as well, which is where we met, of money actually is this energy that wants to support love and wants us to have the most expansive experience we can in this lifetime.
Yes.
This generosity that's behind it.
And what's exciting to me is I was sort of thinking, this cryptocurrency thing, I'm not going to get it, and it's going to be like, here comes my son in my mind again. This is going to be he's going to understand this. This is not for me. But I asked to learn about it. I asked to understand about it, and just it's so fascinating just tracking that process, because there's been kind of overwhelm. I'll get it. I'll learn something. I'll be like, ugh, this is overwhelming. Or the other piece is, oh, this is all virtual, right? This isn't tangible, which is antithetical to everything I'm about. I'm about the earth. I'm about the body. I'm about embodiment. But this is the invisible world. I suddenly understood, like, this is energy. And what we speak into being becomes being. And this is what people are doing in the cryptocurrency world, is they're speaking value that can actually become traded and have tangible meaning. They're speaking that into being in the energetic realm, and they're using computers. They're using the computer space. I don't even know what the word is to call it. They're using virtual space. To bring it into being. So it all just suddenly like arranged itself and made sense to me, at least in this moment.
But that's what's been going on. I mean, isn't it something crazy like 50% of the American economy is not actually based on anything physical? It's just promises, and I love the stock exchange trades
Right.
on emotion. When
Right.
people are feeling optimistic, it goes up. When people are feeling pessimistic, it goes down. But not because anything physically has changed. So it does make sense that it's moving more into this energetic field.
Yeah. And, previously I felt really cynical and disgusted by that because it didn't seem real. But now I understand that it absolutely is real if you understand how to move in that realm, in the energetic
Yes.
realm. So
Hmm.
um, we'll see. But it feels exciting to me. And also that these are really, I think the other thing is that, and I'm not going to remember names because I'm new at this, but there was one particular mathematician that I was listening to in a YouTube, and he was being so vehement. He said, this is not about making tons of money. It is about making connections between people. It is about the value of relationships. I mean, he went on and on and on. And he was somebody that's was working with Bitcoin originally. So I I feel like I got a transmission from what he said of like, oh my God, there is a place for really deep values in this currency, in this way of in this way of moving value around the world. And it's very exciting. Um uh and so my friend who's vetting all this information for me, which is helping me to enter into this world, she turned me on to a currency that's being developed that has to do with creating carbon in the soil and working with farmers worldwide, and how this is connected to food, this is connected to the environment,
Mm.
and that they get and it solves the problem of creating immediate cash flow for these farmers while we're building basically the earth back into this health. And this morning, all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my gosh, and I want a currency that supports the arts. I want a currency that supports the welfare of the children. I want a currency that supports the welfare of wild animals, and endangered species, that these things can be linked.
Yeah.
It's so exciting.
That-
So, and I was thinking how philanthropists, if you think about traditional philanthropy, you have people who come from wealthy families, and they've made their money off, dastardly things like Exxon, or these, they're these, you know, that's an example. Big oil company families, they have all this money, but then they support the arts, right? And so then we've had this dilemma
yeah.
of, ugh, what do we do about this? This solves that dilemma where we can, where everything is more in harmony with our energy, with our financial energy and our
Mm.
hearts. So that's what I'm thinking about.
It's really exciting. And it does feel to me like the next generation is much more conscious and aware than we were probably. They're making their choices already in terms of how they spend their money. There just seems to be so much more backing up their decision making around money than there was with us, maybe.
Well, understanding of the virtual space, which again, like I've been so disgusted by, and it's like, no, this is the same. This is another form of the energetic realm.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, before we started this, before I start all of these interviews, I bring us into an energetic field, and I welcome all of our participants in, because energy doesn't, it's not just in one place, is it? You're in Santa Fe, I'm in England, but we're energetically connected. So absolutely. And our wishes and our desires are energetic things.
Yes. And there's somebody, maybe it was Sarah, I can't remember who, but was talking about, being in this Zoom age that we're in with COVID, that this is actually, again, it's not some cynical, like we're not in, I mean, it's not the same as being in person. That's a whole different, of course, very powerful, rich experience that we're missing. But this is what, the shamans have known, is that you can be in touch with somebody on the other side of the world, and that the connection can be just as real. So again, like there's a way in which we're all being upgraded, should we choose to accept it, into understanding the realm of the invisible and the power that's there, and that it doesn't actually prevent and can actually magnify our connections and our transmissions that we receive and give.
Yeah. In fact, I would almost argue that some of the interactions I have on Zoom are more intense. I mean, I come away from Zoom calls, and I think a lot of people do, exhausted in a way that I wasn't by the physical, because I suppose you can flit away from the physical so you can look out, but we're so and we're interacting with ourselves. Unless we hide our self view, we've got that feedback of who we are and how we're showing up. And so many people who it makes me think about, was it Andy Warhol with his 15 minutes of fame? Here we all are. We all know what we look like on video now.
Right. I do have my self view hidden. That's the new trick. I really like doing that.
Oh, okay.
It makes me feel, I had gotten used to that view, and not having it feels a little like,
How do I look?
Right.
You look lovely.
Thank you. So do you.
So exciting times.
It is. It feels very exciting.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fear at the moment, isn't there? All of my speakers are not seeing this time as a time for fear. We're all experiencing this as a time for opportunity and excitement, and what's around the corner, this massive reset, and starting to live life a different way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's very much like that wave. The wave can crash down and crush you, or you can just be like, whoo, here we go. It's really carrying us to something really new. And oh, well, see, now I want to talk about the yin, because the yin is that space of not knowing, and the formlessness and confusion. And so, to speak about my work and the power of the yin, part of the power of the yin is knowing when you're in a liminal space, and saying, oh, okay, even though this is inherently a space of discomfort, organization, things reorganizing, but not having reorganized yet. So it's this kind of mushy, the goo phase of the caterpillar that's in the cocoon getting ready to form into a butterfly. If we know that we're in that phase, and we understand how that phase fits into the cycle of creativity, then we can feel calm and grounded in the midst of that not knowing. that makes it very powerful. Then we're not suffering from fear. We're not suffering from a sense of losing your mooring. You actually understand that this is a phase in the cycle of creativity and generativeness.
Yeah.
So that can make it exciting. And we can surrender more easily rather than struggling against it.
Yeah.
Which again means we have access to we don't lose potency in that time. We're actually growing. We can be preparing and filling for the next phase so that we are ready to embrace what shows up the moment that it shows up. Yeah. So yeah, there's another way to be in this, and that's not to say that there are real people having very hard times, and it's very intense. So.
But it does feel to me like wherever we choose, I mean, we're lucky we get to work from home and online, but lots of people are working from home and online. And I do think where we decide to put our focus, it's a simple law of attraction thing, isn't it? Energy flows where focus goes. If you want to look at the fear, then yes, that's what you're going to see. And I love the fact that you talked about the butterfly, as I didn't realize quite how complete that disintegration is of the caterpillar going into the cocoon. It's like everything's gone, isn't it?
How is that even possible biologically?
I believe even down to the DNA, and then these imagination cells start to crop up around the organism. Then they cluster, and then another cluster forms, and then these clusters start to talk to each other, and they combine. Wow. And that's another part of the purpose for me of creating this summit, was to bring a few clusters together and say there's this cluster over here and there's that cluster there, and when these clusters speak, then we start to really amplify our voices, and we start to amplify this change, and we start to move the attention from the fear and the we're all gonna die to what is this all about, this open expectancy.
Beautiful. Absolutely. And we're all going to die. We are dying. Something is dying. Yeah, that's a dissolution, a dissolving. Yeah. And speaking of dying, I am fascinated by how many brilliant people are leaving the world right now too. I know quite a few people who have died who are, brilliant teachers who are not super elderly. And so I'm fascinated by, wow, certain people are leaving the planet. And even though that may feel like, oh, how could they leave this time when we need them? It also feels like, there's room being made for something else. So it's a really interesting phenomenon to me. Not without grief, but again, there's new life that's really pushing itself through right now.
Yeah, and we have the means to us lowly types. Just you don't have to be a great big superstar. The whole internet thing just gives us all a platform and all a voice, and so much opportunity to find our tribe and to find the things that resonate for us, because there are so many different options.
Yeah, we all need to play a part in this.
Yeah,
we all have different pieces to bring through. I mean, that's always true, but it feels so much more available right now.
It does. I love our beaming smiles at what's next.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. I love what you said about cryptocurrency. In fact, I should probably get you, once your friend has vetted and you've vetted, maybe you could send on
I'll pass it on the chain.
The next look, because it does feel like it's the next. And I love that there's more choice about how we deal with money, because at the moment, of course, money flows and money circulates, but it seems Yeah, there isn't so much choice. I mean, there are organizations like B Corp, I know, where you can choose to have organic food, and but to have it so much more focused on the
Well,
things
and
that
think about like organic food, right? That's a perfect example. You've got different countries that have different standards of what organic means.
Mm,
And those standards are affected or corrupted by various uh, um, influences in a given country. Like my understanding is the organic food in the United States is not as good as the organic food, maybe in, I don't know if it's in the EU, all across the EU or what, but there's higher standards in other countries than there are here. If we are not even about countries anymore, and it's this currency that is affecting farmers worldwide without borders, it doesn't matter. Like we're bypassing that whole thing. I mean, it's so brilliant. Um, and the other thing I was going to say that this idea of decentralized currency and money. So again, like it's funny, to be speaking about this today. When last night I was like, "What?" But I woke up today and I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm excited about this," and it just started coming through. But so one way that this decentralized system has been explained to me is that everyone becomes their own bank. Well, this means everybody I mean, symbolically and actually, this means we all have that much more of a direct relationship to money itself. It's
mhm.
almost like the church, right? Versus God. We don't have to go to the church to access God. We don't have to go to other banks who tell us how we can access this energy of money. We have our own direct, like, think about just some, I mean, is it even fair to say symbolically? It is actually removing this humongous structure that was slowing or manipulating the flow of money to us as individuals. And now we are forming our own relationship. So, and if we are going into that experience with this spiritual, energetic connection with money, then we can really run with it. We can really magnify that. We can really, fill into that potential
That
even
feels
more.
very liberating. And I know those of us who lived through the banking crisis, the credit crunch, etc., where we did feel it was all sort of being done to us.
That's
The
right.
idea of taking it out of those great big towers.
And incidentally, who suffers the most from those structures? People who are creatives, whose finances do not fit in the little boxes. Healers, of course.
Yes.
Um, People who haven't, and then there's this whole idea of, oh, well, you need to build credit, and so therefore you're giving money to these credit card companies, and then that allows you to own a house, and it's like this whole chain of command that is very limiting, and also creates almost a moral, like, this is the right way, this means you're good financially.
Yeah.
And yet with the crash in the late 90s, right? That late, no, I mean late 2008, not the 90s, but 2008. Then it's like, oh, people that did things right got screwed by that as well.
Yeah.
So that's an illusion, that system. And yet it has kept people like myself, for example, out of certain access.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, so this feels very liberating for sure.
Yeah. And talk about the healers. We both share this little bugbear, don't we, about how healers won't judge. We're both healers, so
We're both in the healing arts, and yeah. So we were talking before we started recording about this struggle. I have so many different thoughts about healers and money. So I live in Santa Fe, which is very much a place that many people in the healing arts are drawn to or become healers. And so I'm really surrounded by what feels to me like a really strong poverty mentality around around healers. And I actually think, Emma, that there's a connection with women and healers in particular, and witches, and the devaluing, and certainly the word that came up in my head just now is dismembering of healers in the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in comparison to people who don't often call themselves healers, but medical professionals, the medical system. So, the first thing is for me to recognize that we have devalued what we're doing based on this huge historical precedent of literally burning witches. And so, can we own our value of what we're offering? And let me just pause there because I want to speak into this from the present and not just from kind of my past ideas about this. What my experience is in the present around this is for me to understand or have a number that I think is the value, is what I want to charge for my work, that really feels like this is the true amount that I want to charge. And what my experience has been is if I can step into that and really embody that, then I actually have the flexibility when a situation comes up where I want to work with somebody and they can't quite afford that, or it's more important for me to work with them than to get my full fee. Mm-hmm. Then I feel like I have an entree into the creative space of how do we want to meet each other so we can work together in a way that really values the work. So these are different stages I've gone through. There's the stage of like, oh, everybody's charging this, but I want to charge this. Mm-hmm. And then there's the stage of, oh my God, the number I really want to charge is this. Like I started out around $75 and then $85 felt like a big push, but the real number that kept coming up was $125. This is just for a single session. And then there's, the male healers I know in the community that are charging the top dollar. And why is that acceptable? And who goes to see them, versus the women who are over here, charging a pittance for what they're offering. And then stepping into this higher number and then seeing, okay, who shows up, and allowing myself to actually learn from the clients who show up, who pay my fees. Like, what are they receiving as a result of paying this price to me? Mm-hmm. And how are they relating to my work as a result of this price, of this amount? And who are the people that are asking if I would charge them less, and why? And how does that feel in a given moment? And anyway, it's been a really interesting journey. And where I am at right now is that I love my prices, and I love the freedom of creative flexibility to play with my prices now. Yeah. And I don't have to apologize about that to anybody or explain it to anybody. And then the other piece to that journey also is my experience as a consumer of the healing arts, and what I pay, and how I place different value with different practitioners, and why. Mm-hmm. And also hearing how my friends, my community, how we talk among ourselves of, oh, I just found this new such and such, you should go see her, she's very affordable. And then I'm like, how does that feel to me? Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a fascinating journey.
It's fascinating. And even when it's it's less affordable and a bit more pricey, actually that is really stepping into one's own worth and saying, absolutely, I'm worth having that little bit that little bit of extra.
Mhm.
And so there's a whole thing about how the healer is valuing themselves, how the person who's wanting to be healed is valuing themselves. And ultimately, what we give is so deep. I mean, compared to the medical practitioners who may well come with a scalpel. I mean, over here in the UK, you go to see your general practitioner for a little consultation. You get 5 minutes with them, and there's no depth. It's and invariably they send you off with a prescription. So big pharma, thank you very much. They've bagged another few £100 or whatever it is for that prescription. Where actually often the healing that people are looking for is on a much deeper level,
Yeah,
which is where coaches and therapists and people who take more time and slow it all down, that's where the value is for me. And,
absolutely. And that's
and
where the healing is.
that's where the healing is, exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Was there something else you're going to say about that? Looked like you're about to go in a different.
Oh, I could go on. Well, and the energy of it, the depth, when we're deeply connected on an energetic level, rather than just get a pen or type it into a computer, print something off, and on you go. And next, it almost feels like going to the supermarket when you're in a doctor's surgery. And I know general practice has its place, but I also know the depth of healing that we can get in a less, whatever the word is.
When it's outside of that medical system, which is,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
When
Oh
it's
my
really,
goodness. I mean, I just find with clients, it's like some of them, they can't just even to be listened to and to make connections that they've never seen before in what they're in their circumstances and their situation. I had one client who he had this hideous tremor that had started in his on one side of his body. And he told me the story. He's like, well, it started after I was, working all day and turning my head a lot. And I have had a history of head injuries, and my neck is stiff and it feels like it's coming from my neck, etc. I'm like, got it, right. That makes total sense. And then he said, but, like I went to see the doctor and he just said, oh, you have Parkinson's. Here's a prescription. Yeah, I was mortified. And then he's wanting to get in with a neurologist, which is fine, but oddly, neurologists aren't going to look at like just impinged nerves. I don't understand. And what was intense about that particular client, well, the other thing about what we charge and the system that we're in, I mean, you have national health care. We don't have national health care, but then there's like, what things will insurance pay for? I mean, I've had this problem myself. Like, well, I could go down this road and then my insurance will cover it. Or I could go down this road and I have to pay for this out of pocket.
yeah,
And so that creates this terrible disparity of options and a weird valuing, devaluing thing. And we also, if people check in with themselves, I mean, culturally, we trust the medical system to the extent that we understand there's going to be all these failings in the medical system, but we're still going to go with them.
yeah,
Whereas when you go to an alternative healer, it's like, does this shit really work? It's like, am I going to kill you accidentally? Probably not. Whereas it's
yeah,
more likely to happen, to the conventional. I mean, these are huge generalizations, but there's statistics about this too. So it's a very skewed system of valuation for sure.
it is. It is.
And then we add in something that, being a doctor is, it's considered this arduous path. It's very expensive to become a doctor. It takes many years. You suffer, you're exhausted, all these terrible things. You're coming from this really terrible, you're not coming from a resourced place in your medical training. Whereas many of us who are healers, some of these are our natural gifts.
Mm,
Right?
absolutely.
And so then there's this thing of, well, how can this have value when it comes so easily to me,
Yeah.
or when it feels so good and natural?
Mm,
What?
yes. I think that's where it really, that's where it starts, is yeah, I'm enjoying it. But that's another thing about money, how money loves to be around us when we're working in bliss. And
Yes.
whatever your bliss is, if your bliss is programming computers, knock yourself out. It's, it's, we are, the plan was really to have a good time when we came down here. It wasn't this suffering, as some crazy statistic like 87% of people are unhappy in work. I mean, what's
Oh,
that about?
yeah.
That's not a happy life.
Right, right.
And all of this change, everything that's going on, I think is just gonna, it's just opening it all up. I think we're going to come out of all of this and go, oh, let's do it differently.
Yeah. Well, and I have to say a piece, I have to give acknowledgement to the shadow as well, which is that there can be a real uh like that, an initiatory experience of coming into our gifts too, which is not an easy path, which isn't necessarily easy and blissful. There's the dark side too of really stepping into our gifts. I don't even want to say dark in the sense of, not in the sense of negative, but in the sense of, there's an alchemy, there's a coming through the fire, which is what this time is as well. It's a real, we're in the forge, being reforged. So it's all of that. There's the bliss, there's the naturalness, and there's the being tested, so that we are stronger and more rooted in what we're here to do. And again, if you know that that's what's happening, it makes it a lot easier.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. Oh, David, it's been an absolute delight talking to you, as it always is.
Oh my goodness, likewise. Thank you for including me. I'm excited about this series.
Yeah, me too. And if anybody wants to reach out to you,
Yes.
your your website is here.
Yes.
Is 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 there anything?
Oh, yes. You had talked about a little gift. Is that right? For somebody who contacts
Yeah.
me? I would love that. So, yes, I actually have a meditation, a recorded meditation that I would offer. It's called the Transformation Meditation. And this is a guided, obviously, it's a guided audio meditation that works with. So, when we are in this process of changing form, of moving from one thing into another, all these pieces of ourselves that we want to have on board and in alignment with the new program, with the new energy that's coming in with this transition that's happening. And so it's not just our ideas and thoughts, it's our energy body and it's our nervous system as well. A lot of people in a process of changing, they say, well, I just want everything to be different, but I'm still in these old habits, or I'm still in a kind of familiar panic, or I still go back to this sort of old rhythm. And what that indicates to me is the nervous system can go in, and this is physiological, literally the nervous system can be in these loops of just being used to certain patterns of being, whether that's being in the fight or flight state, for example, instead of moving into, oh my gosh, the rest and the healing and the joy, which we talked about. So this meditation that I want to offer folks to get in touch with me actually helps reprogram on the nervous system level as well, so that the nervous system lets go of the old patterns and is ready to move into the new, can take on the new. So we don't leave any part of you behind as you're in a transformational process.
Beautiful. Thank you so, so much. I could almost feel it as you were
I
speaking.
could see that. I'm so glad.
Speaking it, casting your magic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful.
Me too.